Hello, Symposiast. I'm Dr. Angela Puca, Religious Studies PhD and University Lecturer, and this is your online resource for the academic study of magic esotericism, paganism, shamanism, and all things occult. Today, we talk about quite a fascinating topic, in my opinion, which is understanding the different models of magic, how practitioners explain the unexplainable. How does magic work? What are the models whereby magic works? For centuries, practitioners and scholars of esotericism have grappled with a fundamental question. If magic works, how does it work? This question has produced explanatory frameworks, each offering its own lens through which to understand the mechanisms behind magical practice. And whether you're a student of esoteric traditions, a practitioner seeking theoretical grounding, or simply curious about how magical thinking operates, understanding these models provides essential insight into the diverse world of occult belief and practice. The most commonly discussed framework divides magical understanding into three primary models: spirit, psychological, and natural. However, as we will explore, the landscape of magical theory is far richer and more nuanced than this simple division suggests. Moreover, whilst practitioners often blend models pragmatically, certain frameworks fundamentally contradict one another, which creates philosophical tensions that have sparked centuries of debate within esoteric communities. Drawing from works of scholars like Wouter Hanegraaff, Susan Greenwood, Iggy Lasprem, and Tanya Luhrmann, this exploration presents, or hopes to present, a comprehensive typology that bridges both esoteric practice and academic analysis, whilst acknowledging the genuine conflicts between different approaches. But before we dive into today's topic, I'd like to remind you that this project of delivering free academic scholarship based on peer-reviewed sources and my analysis of primary sources on all topics in esotericism can only exist thanks to you. I don't have a fancy sponsor, but I've got you. So if you have the means and want to support my project and keep it going, please consider supporting it by joining my fantastic Patreon community. You can also send donations on PayPal, Coffee. You can become a YouTube member. All the options to support my work are in a pinned comment, in bio, in the info box, in the cards, everywhere. So thank you so much for considering. Also, don't forget to sign up for my newsletter on my website, drangelapuca.com. It's free, and it's a free way to stay in contact with me regardless of social media algorithms, and also share my videos around, because that's how the symposium can grow. Now let's crack on. So let's now talk about the 6 primary models of magic. The first one is the spirit model. The spirit model represents humanity's oldest and probably most widespread understanding of magical causation. In this framework, magic works through interaction with non-human intelligences, spirits, ancestors, angels, demons, deities, or other conscious entities inhabiting the cosmos. The practitioner becomes a mediator, negotiator, or commander, establishing relationships with these beings through ritual language, symbolic offerings, or acts of devotion, and sometimes coercion. This model underpins numerous traditions worldwide, from the grimoire magic of medieval Europe to shamanic practices across indigenous cultures, from Afro-diasporic religions like voodoo and candomblé to contemporary spirit work. Its fundamental logic is relational and animistic. The universe teams with conscious agencies, each possessing their own powers and personalities. As scholars like Jeffrey Kripal and Emma Wilby observe, these practices blur conventional distinctions between religion, possession, and operative magic, situating magical work within networks of reciprocal communication rather than mechanical causation. The spirit model fundamentally contradicts purely psychological interpretations. If spirits are genuinely autonomous entities with independent existence and agency, they cannot simultaneously be mere projections of the human unconscious. This creates an irreconcilable divide. Either the practitioner is genuinely communicating with external intelligences, or they are engaging in elaborate self-delusion. Traditional spirit workers often view psychological reductionism as both insulting and dangerous. and argue that treating real spirits as mental constructs leads to failed magic at best and spiritual harm at worst. Now, let's go into the second model of magic, the psychological model. Emerging prominently in the 19th and 20th century, the psychological model reframes magic as the manipulation of consciousness rather than external forces. Aleister Crowley's famous definition of magic as the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with the will perfectly encapsulates this internalization of magical power. Within this framework, magical symbols, rituals, and even spirits themselves become understood as projections, archetypes, or constructs of the unconscious mind. This approach found sophisticated expression through Carl Jung's theory of archetypes and the collective unconscious, Israel Regardie's synthesis of hermetic practice with psychotherapy, and the radical pragmatism of chaos magicians like Peter J. Carroll and Phil Hine. Here, magic functions as psychodrama, self-conditioning, or what might be called consciousness engineering. As Egil Asprem notes, this psychological turn reflects the problem of disenchantment in modernity, where internal psychological explanations replaced external metaphysical realities in occult thought. The psychological model, when taken to its logical conclusion, excludes both the spirit and the natural models. If all magical effects are products of consciousness and suggestion, then claims of manipulating external energies or communicating with independent entities become category errors. Strict psychological practitioners argue that belief in external spirits or energies represents a failure to recognize the true source of magical power, the human mind itself. This stance can create bitter divisions within magical communities, with psychological purists dismissing traditional practitioners as superstitious, whilst being themselves dismissed as reductionist materialists in magical clothing. Now onto the natural or energetic model. The natural model, sometimes called the energy model, posits that magic manipulates subtle forces or natural correspondences inherent in the cosmos itself. These energies are neither conscious spirits nor purely subjective projections, but rather impersonal vital currents that connect mind and matter. Whether called chi, prana, odic force, astral light, or orgon energy, these forces form an invisible substrate through which magical influence flows. This understanding characterized Renaissance natural magic as practiced by Marsilio Ficino and Giordano Bruno, informed the magnetic and mesmeric movements of the 18th century and 19th century, and continues in contemporary energy work and New Age practices. It reflects a cosmic vitalism where the magician harmonizes microcosm and macrocosm, often through astrology, alchemy, or elemental correspondences, as documented by scholars like D.P. Walker and Wouter Hanegraaff. The natural model conflicts with both pure psychological approaches and certain spirit models. If magical energies are impersonal forces like magnetism or electricity, they cannot be reduced to psychological states, nor can they possess the consciousness and intentionality that spirit work requires. Energy workers who insist on the objective reality of subtle forces often find themselves at odds with both psychological reductionists who deny external energies exist and spirit workers who insist that what energy workers call forces are actually conscious entities being disrespectfully treated as mere power sources, like service providers without a soul. The fourth model is the information or cybernetic model. Born from late 20th century chaos magic and systems theory, the information model treats magical operations as exchanges of information within a vast interconnected field. The universe becomes conceived as a cybernetic network, a vast computer simulation, or an information matrix where symbols, intentions, and data patterns can be reprogrammed to alter reality. Practitioners like Phil Hine and Peter Carroll, along with contemporary digital occultists, understand sigils as information packets transmitted through the unconscious into reality's underlying code. This model bridges traditional occultism with quantum speculation, mimetics, and digital spirituality. As Egil Asprem observes, it reflects post-human and computational paradigms of causation, offering a thoroughly modern framework for ancient practices. The information model, in its pure form, renders both spirit and energies as metaphorical descriptions of information patterns, potentially alienating traditionalists. If reality is fundamentally computational, then spirits become algorithms, energies become data flows, and consciousness itself becomes information processing. This reframing can seem to drain magic of its numinous quality, reducing sacred mysteries to coding exercises. Traditional practitioners often argue that the information model represents a kind of technological imperialism, forcing ancient wisdom into contemporary digital metaphors that fundamentally misunderstand the nature of magical experience. Now, on to the fifth model, the sociological or cultural model. More analytical than operative, the sociological model interprets magic as a mode of social communication and power generation. In this view, magic works precisely because people believe it works, creating shared symbolic efficacy within cultural frameworks. Scholars like Stanley Tambaya and Michael Taussig explore this performative dimension. Ritual words and gestures produce real social transformations through belief, expectation, and embodied participation. Whilst not always consciously adopted by practitioners, many magical systems implicitly rely on collective validation through coven rites, initiatory hierarchies, or charismatic authority. This aligns with what ritual theorist Catherine Bell called the ritualization of power, where magical efficacy emerges from social consensus and cultural performance. The sociological model, when dominant, dismisses all other models as elaborate social constructions. From this perspective, claims of real spirits, actual energies, or genuine psychological transformation become secondary to magic's function as social theater. This creates profound tension with practitioners who insist on the objective reality of their experiences. Many working magicians view purely sociological interpretations as academic colonization that explains away rather than explains the practice, reducing profound spiritual experiences to mere cultural performance. The sixth and final model is the transcendent or mystical model. In theurgic and mystical contexts, magic transcends mere manipulation of reality to become a path of divine unity and self-realization. This model views ritual not as a means to worldly ends, but as a vehicle for spiritual ascent, self-deification, or gnosis. The practitioner seeks not to change external circumstances, but to transform their very being, awakening to their divine nature. From Neoplatonic theurgy, as articulated by Iamblichus, through the radical mysticism of Giordano Bruno, to the left-hand path practices of Kenneth Grant, this model presents magic as the unfolding of divine consciousness through human experience. Here, magical efficacy depends not on producing external results, but on achieving ontological transformation. The mystical model can conflict with practical magical approaches that focus on concrete results. If true magic is about transcending material reality rather than manipulating it, then whether magic, love spells, and healing work become distractions from genuine spiritual development. Some theurgists and mystics argue that using magic for worldly purposes represents a fundamental misunderstanding, even corruption of sacred mysteries. Conversely, practical magicians often view pure mysticism as privileged escapism that ignores real world needs and responsibilities. Now, let's navigate the incompatibilities and contradictions. Whilst practitioners often blend models creatively, certain combinations create logical contradictions that cannot be easily resolved. For instance, we have the consciousness problem. The spirit and psychological models present mutually exclusive explanations for the same phenomena. When a practitioner reports communicating with Archangel Michael, either Michael exists as an independent entity, according to the spirit model, or represents an aspect of the practitioner's psyche, according to the psychological model. Attempts to claim both are true often rely on semantic gymnastics rather than coherent philosophy. This isn't merely academic, it has practical implications for how rituals are constructed, how results are interpreted, and how practitioners understand their experiences. Then we have the substance question. Natural energetic models posit that magical forces have some form of substantial existence, however subtle. Information models suggest everything is pattern and data without substance. These represent fundamentally different ontologies. Is the energy a Reiki practitioner channels an actual force, or merely information reorganizing itself? The answer drastically changes how one approaches healing work. We also have the agency dilemma. Spirit models require conscious agents with will and intention. Natural models work with impersonal forces. Attempting to combine them, such as treating planetary influences as both conscious gods and impersonal energies, creates philosophical muddles. Are the planetary hours tools for timing magic according to impersonal cosmic rhythms, or appointments with conscious planetary intelligences? The practical approaches differ significantly based on the answer. These theoretical conflicts have created real divisions within esoteric communities. The 19th century split between spiritualists, who insisted on genuine spirit communication, and theosophists, who increasingly psychologized spiritual phenomena, reflected the spirit versus psychological divide. The Golden Dawn's internal conflicts partly stemmed from disagreements about whether magical forces were objective or subjective. Contemporary pagan communities sometimes fracture along lines of hard polytheism, gods as real, distinct entities, versus soft polytheists, gods as archetypes or aspects of unified divinity. The emergence of chaos magic in the late 20th century attempted to sidestep these conflicts through meta-belief, treating all models as equally valid tools. Yet, even this approach excludes those who insist on absolute truth claims. A traditional Catholic exorcist and a chaos magician cannot both be correct about the nature of demons. Their models are fundamentally incompatible despite potential surface similarities in ritual practice. Despite these genuine contradictions, most practitioners navigate model conflicts through various strategies. One is hierarchical integration. Some practitioners arrange models hierarchically rather than treating them as equal. A hermetic magician might acknowledge psychological effects whilst maintaining that higher levels of practice involve genuine spiritual contact. The psychological model becomes a preliminary stage rather than the complete picture. This preserves model integrity whilst allowing practical flexibility. Many practitioners consciously switch between incompatible models depending on context. A healer might use the spirit model when working with indigenous traditions, respecting the spirits as real, adopt an energy model for Reiki practice, and embrace psychological frameworks when counseling clients. This compartmentalization avoids direct contradiction by keeping models separate. Some traditions, particularly those influenced by Eastern philosophy, embrace paradox as fundamental to magical reality. empty. From this perspective, spirits can be simultaneously real and psychological. Energies can be both substantial and empty, because ordinary logic fails at magical levels of reality. Some critics argue that this represents intellectual laziness disguised as mystical wisdom, whilst proponents claim it reflects genuine mystical insight. Perhaps most commonly, working magicians simply prioritize results over theoretical consistency. If invoking spirits as real beings produces results, they will work that way regardless of psychological theories. If treating chakras as psychological centers rather than literal energy wheels improves healing outcomes, that approach wins. This pragmatism frustrates theorists but satisfies practitioners focused on efficacy. So, to sum it up and conclude, understanding these models transforms magical practice in concrete, immediate ways. When a ritual fails, model awareness helps diagnose why. Did you treat an autonomous spirit as a psychological construct, offering visualization where tradition demanded physical offerings? Did you approach subtle energies with mechanical techniques when consciousness based methods were required? When designing new workings, model consciousness enables strategic choices. Invoking Hermes for communication might use spirit model protocols like formal evocation with offerings, or psychological approaches, active imagination and archetypal meditation. But mixing them carelessly often produces weak results. Model literacy also guides learning. Recognizing that a teacher operates from a purely energetic model whilst you seek spirit relationships prevents frustrating miscommunication and wasted effort. In group work, understanding that your coven mate experiences gods as literal beings whilst you see them as archetypes helps navigate ritual planning without inadvertent disrespect. Perhaps most critically, model awareness enables strategic flexibility. The pragmatic magician who understands multiple models can shift approaches when one fails, treat healing work energetically whilst approaching divination through spirit consultation, or use psychological techniques for self-transformation whilst maintaining spirit relationships for external workings. This isn't relativism, but tactical wisdom. The magician who insists on forcing all magic through a single model is like a craftsman with only one tool, whilst the model literate practitioner carries a full toolkit, selecting the right instrument for each task. Models aren't just maps of magical territory, they are the difference between magic that works and magic that merely hopes to work, between practice that evolves and practice that stagnates, between a magician who adapts and one who merely repeats. In magic, as in any craft, understanding your tools and materials at the deepest level separates competent practitioners from true artists of the impossible. Thank you so much for watching until this point. And if you did, I want you to leave me a painting emoji, because I just thought that the final metaphor of the artist will really capture this video in its essence. So also let me know in the comments what you think about these models of magic. Which one do you adopt the most? If it is one or if it is multiple? Do you have any argument as to whether it might be better to stick to one model of magic, or whether you think it might be better to actually shift between multiple ones? Let me know all of that in the comments, because even though I don't always reply to your comments, I read them all from the first to the last. So definitely let me know what you think. And if you enjoy my project of delivering free academic scholarship and philosophical musings on esotericism, please consider supporting my work, because that's the only way this project stays alive. So if you want me to keep doing this job and this work here on YouTube and on social media, please consider supporting me if you can afford it. You can join my fantastic Patreon community. send PayPal donations. You can also send donations on Coffee. You can join my YouTube memberships. Super thank me in the comments, and checking out all my services at drangelapuca.com. Also check out my online courses. I have one on Italian witchcraft and one on the left-hand path, and you can take them anytime, and it will also get you in contact with me, of course, because there's also Q&A sessions. So please consider all these things, and thank you so much. And also, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and activate that ping notification bell so that you know when I'm uploading a new video or I'm live. And share this video around, or any of my videos around. It helps the Symposium grow, and this is a free way to support me. Also, hype the video. Apparently it's a thing now, so if you see the hype thing on YouTube, please hype the video. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you, and thank you for being part of the Symposium. I hope that you stay tuned for all the academic fun. Bye for now.
To the